Thank you everyone for being here. This is the presentation of the fiscal year 26 annual estimate, the mayor's annual estimate. I'm Mike Galimi, the mayor of Utica. Before I begin, I'd like to thank Budget Director Elmir Keltek. Last year, I was in a position where myself and Diana Corey from the Controller's Office and a few other people were putting the budget together, and I was a month into office as a new mayor without a current budget director and without any guidance, because prior to me taking office, there was no budget director. A lot of good people in this building kept things moving, but not having that last year put things into great perspective with our current budget director, who sits before us, truly acting in the full capacity, not just in putting this estimate together, but since joining the city, in the end of the first quarter last year, his oversight has allowed us to do many things, whether it's been work to institute new purchasing policies for our purchasing agent and that department that was long shuttered, work towards actually going through those monthly cash reports, the monthly budget rundowns, and truly giving the administration the arm to have budget oversight again. So thank you, Elmir. Greatly appreciated. The agenda for today is pretty straightforward. It's Utica's financial position. It's some highlights from calendar year one, in which case we took actions of fiscal responsibility immediately and throughout the year. It's the presentation of our annual estimate, the year-over-year increases, the fiscal challenges, the budget analysis, and of course the tax levy. One of the discussions after we discuss the tax levy is the fact that we need to shift the future burden. Okay, we need to take actions to truly balance Utica's reliance on property tax to other revenue sources, whether it's county, state, or things we could do within the city to raise revenue sources so that we don't continually have to go back to the property tax owners over and over again. And then we're going to talk about igniting momentum, leveraging a new vision, building on our successes, and how we're laying the groundwork now with the team we're building within the four walls of City Hall and every other city building that keeps us running so that we can have a bright future. Now, this slide really discusses the fact that this is a financial proposal. This is truly the fact that we're not just presenting the budget. Last year we had to recognize that we were burning cash and we weren't pointed in the right fiscal direction any longer, and we still have a lot of work to do. Things that we have to do, necessary actions, proactive budgeting. We have to create growth. Working towards manageable revenue and expenses. Restore a financial footing, fix blatant mistakes, right? Blatant mistakes. I want to stop there for a minute. We had a building downtown last year that was considered not taxable by the previous administration. It was an ancillary building to the new hospital. We looked into that because we thought that was odd. It was a $9 million valuation that was not on the tax rolls. So all this administration had to do was walk down to the assessor's office and say, hey, what's up with that? And we put $9 million back on the tax rolls because people thought because it was next to a hospital, it should have been not taxable. Those are the types of things we've been seeking out all year, because we were making a lot of simple mistakes because we were busy doing other things like spending money to realize that we should be taking care of the details. We have to manage a debt service. You're going to see in this presentation a slide on debt service that really takes you back. Okay, you will look at the slide and realize what we're up against. We have to control spending. That's why we have a budget director. That's why we've instituted a new purchasing department with a purchasing agent who is now utilizing software connected to our accounting software, Munis, so that when people are going to spend, they have immediate feedback if there's actual budget for it. Secure appropriate state funding. That's something I'll get into, but I'm talking about AIM. I'm not talking about the grants. I'm not talking about the things that can build a new building. I'm talking about the funding that goes to Albany that truly does not get redistributed back to this city to pay for the inarguable services like public safety, providing youth services, cleaning the streets, and making sure we have infrastructure that we're going to maintain. All this wraps up into better governance, good governance, right? If you want to have a better city, you have to have good governance. Now, I've got this picture here. If anyone recognizes that, it's David and Goliath. I have it here specifically because we fight amongst ourselves constantly. And we go through this cyclical battle of, hey, everything's perfect because we, quote, fixed the financial health of the city, and then we just ignore it for a while, and then it spins out of control. Then we fix it again, and it spins out of control. Because we love to fight amongst ourselves, worry about political things, election cycles, really, having that parochial finger pointing here. The reality is we need to all work together, because some of the things we're going to be pointing out is that we're doing everything we can. Our budget hasn't doubled like the state and county budgets have, doubled across the country. We've been fiscally conservative, but the reality is it's the mayor, the common council, and the constituents together fighting things like health insurance increases, state retirement increases, inflation, and unfunded mandates. It's us against that. That's what we need to remember if we're truly going to work not only within our own city, but across the state to better the financial position of every city that's going through the same thing we're going through. So the financial position. A lot of this is very similar to last year, because last year what I did was I came in and said, where have we been for the last 5 years and where are we going? Okay, because if you're going to plan budgets and you have to consider things like raising taxes or advocating to the state for that matter that you need more funding, it needs to be explained and it needs to be positioned in a way that's explainable. So the fiscal year 23-24 audit. It's going to actually be presented in this room in about an hour and a half. The year ended March 31st, 2024. That was the last year of the previous administration, which I took office for in the last quarter, January, February, and March, and that year ended. The audit completed in calendar year 24. The reason I'm mentioning that is because last year was the first time in a very long time we had to do 2 audits. We had to do the fiscal year 23 audit, because no one called for it. And then as soon as we were done with that, we had to make sure that the controller's office would have them in there again dealing with the audit. The controller's office, I could not thank enough. When the auditors are here, they make sure they have every single thing they need. And they had to go through that twice last year in 1 year. And that was very disruptive to the fact that they do have to run the controller's office for the city. So I thank you for that, because the fact that we had to do 2 in 1 year was a lot. The reality is that budget year closed. It was overspent by $2.5 million. And our change in fund balance was another deficit, unfortunately. The deficit ended at $1.1 million, and the end of year fund balance ended at $11.7 million. Our surplus deficit chart. Now, as you can see, I have to step away from the microphone, I apologize. This is going all the way back to 13-14. And you see the fact that we were in financial trouble. Okay, we see a big recovery. Okay, as I stated last year though, 2022 was when that report came out that our fiscal stress was at the lowest level in decades. That was absolutely true right there, but it was not taking into account a lot of the long-standing debt service, increases and things that would take place even 1 year after in 23. So you saw us go from a $3 million surplus, pumping that fund balance, a year later to a $1.3 million deficit. Now, 2023-24. Now, when I came in January, we had a real-time estimation in January, using the numbers that closed in December, that we were looking at a projected $1.8 million deficit. Now, thankfully, we all worked together and made sure it was reined in at 1.1. Part of that was because we got a new budget director. The controller could do their job while the budget director did their job. We started to actually look at things and work together again as a team, and that closed at 1.1. Now, our goal for this year is to break even. Okay, the budget we proposed last year appropriated an immense amount of fund balance, and the goal here is to at least only draw what we appropriated and not go above and beyond that. If we're lucky enough to, quote, have a surplus, what you're gonna have to remember a year from now with that next audit, okay, if you appropriate $3 million of fund balance, for example, right, in a budget, and you only draw $2 million from that, and you end up with a $1 million surplus, our change in net position will still be negative $1 million. Okay, so the fact that we're in the position now where we're appropriating fund balance to actually make the numbers meet is different. It's different territory. We're not doing it because we want to. We're doing it because we have to. We're burning cash. We're trying to turn that around, and that's what this chart's about. Our projected close. Now, this is the actual fund balance. These are actuals, all audited results, okay? Where we ended up in fiscal year 24, about 8.5 to 3.25. This is unrestricted, this is restricted. Now, we're currently estimating that we'll close, if we come out literally break even, zero surplus, zero deficit, our net position still goes down because we had to appropriate so much fund balance along with the tax increase ultimately approved by the Common Council last year. So just to rehash this, fiscal year 21-22, we were at $14.1 million. 22-23, $12.8 million. 23-24, $11.7 million. The budget year, well, it's 24-25, sorry about that little typo, but fiscal year 24-25, the first year I had to prepare a budget for, we're projecting, because we had to share, okay, the increase between fund balance appropriation and a council-approved tax increase that we worked together on. It started at 16.5, council approved it at 13.9. Even though we did that last year, we're still projecting a close where we're gonna end up with 9.3 million left, which means the budget I'm presenting today will have that to work with. So our year-over-year strength is still diminishing, but we're shrinking the increases of expenses and we're decreasing the reliance on fund balance, okay? That's how we're gonna have to dig ourselves out of this hole. And it's not a light switch you can flip. Actions of fiscal responsibility. Just some highlights of some serious things we had to do on day one and then throughout the year. Contract and supply policy changes. Out of control projects stopped, okay? Contract and supply approves change orders. When I showed up in January last year, contract and supply was not approving change orders based on the fact that they looked at an account. They were approving change orders based on the fact that a contractor said they needed a change order to continue working on a project. We shut it down. We reassessed the projects. We reined in the police station project and completed it, okay? One of the firehouse projects, actually, in West Utica was great. That one was not out of control, okay? But there were things like ARPA projects like Valley View, for example. Wonderful project. I can't wait till it opens. But this city had to borrow money to finish that project, after all the ARPA money for it was expended. Those are the things we were doing because we weren't providing simple oversight. We established a purchasing department. Okay, we had unfettered and unwatched purchasing. Now, for those of you who understand purchasing, it requires spending. Okay, we didn't have any oversight. At this juncture, while we had to go through some growing pains, we're building an actual policy now and the oversight that goes along with it, where people understand the budget they're given when a budget is passed and they can stay within that budget. Actual monitoring of our fiscal responsibility. Okay, we worked creatively to do a lot of different things, but I want to talk about the ice skating rink. When we came in, the plan was to have a contractor run the ice skating rink. When it came down to it, the proposal was a revenue sharing program that would cost the city up front between $150,000 and $180,000, and then if revenues did not meet or exceed the expected revenues, somewhere between $220,000 and $250,000 to operate the ice skating rink. Now, lo and behold, that did not include a Zamboni. We built an ice skating rink, but did not have a Zamboni. We did not have ice skates. So first, the employment. Okay, rather than bringing in a contractor that would cost the city a lot and also want to charge $20 per person for ice skating between rentals and getting on the ice, Chief of Staff and I worked together to work with the county and Workforce Solutions, okay, workforce development. We have students and adolescents and college kids who live in Utica actually operating the ice skating rink now. One, it saved us a boatload of money because through workforce development, a lot of that was paid for because we were creating youth employment. We were also creating pride and ownership in working and a resource that the city had for students that are going to Proctor. That was a great thing. So that saved us a ton of money there. Around, I think the program is worth $200,000. A Zamboni. Now, I like to buy used things, always have. I actually just got a line on a couple used plows, just so you know, which we can get immediately. It won't cost us $200,000. But a Zamboni was going to cost anywhere between $100,000 and $150,000. Okay, if we had an ice dressing machine that could get pulled behind a tractor, it was going to cost $40,000 and we had to buy a tractor. Now, we had this beautiful ice skating rink that we wanted to open. We had no way to actually build the ice. So we did actually work through local contacts and through a municipal resource, found a used Zamboni for $16,000. So we literally saved over $90,000 on a Zamboni. And then creative accessory build out and purchases. We worked through a local company to obtain our ice skates, and we had our in-house carpenters build everything we needed to store shoes and rent the skates and actually finish the little ice hut so we can rent skates and actually have a functional ice skating rink. So those are the types of things we have to work creatively. Right, the city's financially upside down right now, but we can't stop. We have great momentum, okay? We have a lot of business development going on. We have a community that loves the city, so we can't just shut it down. So we got that ice skating rink working, and we saved hundreds of thousands of dollars and created youth jobs while we were doing it. Animal control. Excuse me, I just need a little water. Been under the weather for a couple weeks. Now, this was obviously in the news quite a bit. We were cut off from our current contract at the time, and the new quote to renew the contract was $1 million. So we went to work and started interviewing different shelters, and we solved the problem for $150,000. I'm not going to say any more because that's a lot of money we saved. We did have to take on some work of our own, but as it turns out, after we got inspected and the state had come in and saw what we were doing in the first place for animal control, we're now just doing what we should have been doing in the first place. But we did save the city anywhere between $700,000 and $800,000, depending on how you want to look at it. Controlled paving spending. Fiscal year 23 and fiscal year 24 was overspent by $4 million in each year. You saw in calendar year 2023, the council had to borrow money to pay extra money, okay, to the tune of $2 million to finish paying for the paving because spending got so out of control. We had to pay the bills, so they had to borrow the money. I was council president at the time. Now, we budgeted to pave. We stayed within that budget. Yes, we paved more than, quote, the minimum of $5 million, but that's because in the budget, the council did appropriate $2.5 million bond, and through state and federal funding, we had over $3 million, and we were able to do much more than $5 million, and the money that was appropriated is the money that was spent. We did not just go out and pave and have to bond after the fact, which is very questionable. In January, there was a couple things that happened. One, I was read in on a $40 million cleanup that we were responsible for. $40 million. Okay, that's Incinerator Road. The direct cleanup and fine cost was quoted at 20, and quotes in meetings with New York Power Authority was, after all was said and done, actually doing the capping, paying for the cleanup, and the fines that would have to be paid, we were on the hook for $40 million. It was an old problem that just kept getting swept under the rug. We decided to challenge that, and we were about to settle and say we'll be on the hook for the 20 when I took office. I said, back up, that doesn't make sense. We're going to put a solar field there. We're signing up for it. We're going to have to still pay 20 million. So Corporation Counsel and I got together and we said, let's bring in an environmental lawyer, who I might add only cost the city $27,000. We worked with that environmental lawyer. We worked with NYPA. And I'm excited to say that that $40 million cleanup cost and fine that we had to pay, okay, that we were on the hook for, which was coming due, by the way, they were done letting us ignore it, is now $25,000. How? How did we literally get out of a $40 million expense? And this is real. And it's real because we looked at it creatively and said, how else could we solve this? Don't just sign the papers for $20 million. They were putting a solar panel there. So can we expand it? Okay. They were like, yeah, we can. We could do more megawatts. I said, go for it. And then I worked with the environmental lawyer. I said, you know, what would be nice here is if after it's capped, we could have land set aside to potentially build a public safety training facility. So as part of this, not only is this only costing us $25K, but we're going to end up with 5 acres of capped land ready to build if we need to actually build a new public safety training facility at some point. So this entire situation is a result of truly taking problems head on and solving them, and not just signing away the city. Another smaller one, we got a letter in February for a gas station that had a spill like 20 years ago, and they were like, you owe us $450K. I'm like, well, we got an environmental lawyer, let's put her on it. So we settled that for 100. These are things we used to just ship, just say pay it, pay it, pay it. Now we're challenging it. We're saying, why are we on the hook for this? Are we being asked of things that we shouldn't just be agreeing to? And the reality is we were. Annual estimate 2026, budget analysis, year-over-year expenses, tax levy. Breakdown by cost center. Now I changed up the pie chart this year, okay? I wanted people to see really what goes into the fact that we run a city and how little some of these departments take up of the budget, okay? So public safety, obviously primary, it's very important. We all support public safety. It is 65% of that budget. However, you look at DPW, 6.17%. Okay, the mayor's office is like 0.4%. The surprising one, engineering facilities. Okay, without the engineering department, we wouldn't be paving roads, we wouldn't be fixing sewers, we wouldn't be putting up street lights, we would not be maintaining buildings. That department is not just maintenance and infrastructure, It's also the heart of implementing a lot of the grants that we receive. When we received that TAP grant, who's going to implement it? Engineering. When we received that tree grant, who's implementing it? Engineering. That department is responsible for the success of this city, 1.5% of this budget. General city, which is 12%, that captures parks, the budget director, HR, other essential things. Codes, 1.1% of the department. So I know cutting is always part of the conversation, but that's why I wanted to break it up this way. Because people say, hey, let's cut the low-hanging fruit. Let's cut codes in half. Let's cut engineering in half. Well, guess what? Look at that table. Codes is $1 million total. Cut that in half. It doesn't even touch the year-over-year increases we're experiencing, and it would disarm the very department that makes sure buildings don't burn down. Okay? Engineering, same situation. Law, all of these things. Assessor's office, $280,000. That's the whole office. So when people look at the budget and say, let's cut low-hanging fruit, okay, they also need to think of this. The reason these departments are so small is because some of them are one-person departments. Someone came into my office and said, why don't you just cut the budget office? I was like, you want me to get rid of the one budget director? They're like, well, what about purchasing? I was like, well, there's only one purchasing agent. Okay? These are the types of conversations. We've been lean. The reality is, you go back to the David and Goliath picture, it's the expenses that have been killing us. Total adopted budget expense. I like this chart. I always like to show people the growth of the budget, because the reality is, even though our expenses are growing and they're growing faster than our revenue sources, the city of Utica, okay, has not really grown the budget that much when you compare it to neighboring municipalities, higher local governments, and the state and federal government. We've been really trying to stay as lean as possible. And it's just the reality that unavoidable expenses that you can't stop are catching up to us. Year over year increase is state retirement. This one's a kicker. Almost $1.9 million. Now what you see is, and this is a pattern that explains a lot, okay? People asked, where did all this expense come from last year? How is this even happening? Well, this is one of the charts, okay? 2021-22, we were at 7.8 million. Fast forward to today, 12.9. That's an insane amount of growth over a very short period of time. Now, why did that happen? This follows the inflation curve. Anyone who wants to look up the U.S. inflation calculator and inflation calculate all of our expenses, that's what did it. That's what is happening. We just ignored it. Huge increase. I will say at NICOM this weekend, I did have the opportunity to sit with my fellow colleagues, all the mayors, and listen to a presentation from the state controller. We went into the presentation all fired up, like, oh, the market's hot. Why is this happening? And you know what? Every time Thomas DiNapoli speaks, one, I learn something, right? But two, it does give me a semblance that they are managing the retirement. What he explained was that people are living longer, and he referenced the fact that the market's screaming, okay? The other thing he mentioned was the fact that, for good reason, Tier 6 did change. So they're taking into account a lot of that. Now, I still would like to investigate why it's growing so much, because I also agree that while our salaries are going up, and that also raises the retirement contribution, it does seem to be growing at an alarming rate. Healthcare. Okay, we're self-insured, which means we have no one else to run to. While we're investigating things like independent, transparent PBMs, that's prescription benefit managers, and trying to work other things out through just countless review and countless oversight, we are keeping the costs as direct and low as possible, and health insurance costs just keep going up. This year, 1.48 million. Debt service. This is what I was talking about earlier. Our year over year this year from last year to now is not that bad. Our debt service went up 100K. Now last year, we wanted to do a big capital purchase. We have it ready, actually. It's in the hopper. But we took pause last year and we did essential purchases, the police vehicles, the ambulances. We pared it down because we wanted to experience and look at really what was going on with debt cycle. As you can see, and for a long time prior, you see 2021, 22, 22, 23, debt service around $5.5 million. 23, 24 bumps up by about $1 million. Rob Palmieri's last year. But then we were borrowing a lot of money, but not executing purchases. We weren't taking the debt. We weren't actually issuing the debt. We started to towards the end of those years, and now the payments are coming due. So even though we didn't do a giant capital purchase last year, we're still taking on $3 million more of debt service, roughly, over the course of just 2 years, without actually taking on much debt. So we have to deal with it. We do. So just as a summary, the year-over-year increase summary, it's around $5 million, 4.89. Now that's better than last year. The year-over-year was $7 million. That was like insane. That was insurmountable. I was definitely pulling my hair out. But just to look at it, healthcare, 1.46, state retirement, 1.86, debt service, 99K, contractual increases, 900K. These are things we can't stop, okay? So we can't not have healthcare for our employees. We can't not pay the state. We can't not pay our debts, and we have to pay our contractual increases. Sales tax. That's what came to our rescue a lot between 2015 and 2024. The reality is, as predicted, it plateaued. And actually, Councilperson Aiello, I don't have it labeled here, but that is the cannabis tax. So when we started last year, the county was remitting the sales tax all in one. They said, nope, it's all in one thing, put it in the same account. Halfway through the year, they did start remitting it separately. So like you'll see in the budget, because they're sending it to us separately, there's a separate line. So you could track that separately. I know that was one of your things last year, so I wanted to point that out. We're looking at the actuals now coming in, and we're on track. Dana, Corey, we are tracking what we thought about a 5% increase, correct? Right, so a 5%, and that seems to be pretty level. I was hoping for a bigger influx with the hockey tournaments. And I think we will see an influx, but right now it doesn't seem to be happening. So, for lack of a better reason, we're predicting a plateau in the sales tax. Because those are the numbers. So, the annual estimate, okay, we just broke it down. The reality is we do have to, again, have a tax rise. I wanted to break it down a little differently for constituents because the city right now is burning cash. We don't want to get rid of public safety. We want to maintain our services while we work through a financial turnaround. And we're taking all the actions to turn the city around before we have $0 in the fund balance, right? We're doing it now. We're taking those steps. We're going to invite the controller in to do another fiscal assessment of the city. We are working with bond counsel to see how we can restructure things differently. We're doing a lot of different things. But the reality is the tax increase that we're proposing is $3.01 per thousand of assessed value. So just look around the wards. Third ward, you're looking at about $19 per month for an increase. My personal house is like $28 per month. Second ward, $12 per month. Fifth, $10. First, $8. Fourth ward, $15. Sixth ward, $16 per month. How'd we get these numbers? We sat there in ImageMate and literally walked around the neighborhoods in Google Maps and looked at everyone's assessments because any increase is an increase. And we wanted to be real about the fact that I want people to understand what's happening. But I'm looking at it and I'm asking the council, the taxpayers, the constituents to look at it like, look, is $15 more a month worth keeping public safety right now, worth keeping the lights on while we do turn around the city, because the reality is this tax increase, again, is paired with a very sizable and equivalent fund balance reserve draw. So the average residential increase will be $165 per year as proposed. Okay, this is the actual proposed estimate. This is yet to go to the council. The average increase will be around $13.79 a month. Now, to break this down by the numbers and why we're doing it this way, again, last year I did 3 possibilities, right? We just take the whole hit in tax increase, it was like 28% or something crazy, or we totally draw from reserves, do a 2% increase, okay? And that would obviously leave us within 2 years with no money in the bank. So again, while I'm not proposing 16.5%, I am proposing that $3.01 per assessed value for assessed thousand increase. It does equate to a 9.77% increase. Okay, but what I want everyone to remember are these per month increases. Okay, that's what hits us. That's what it means. Now, we are still appropriating $3.8 million worth of fund balance. Now, last year we appropriated 3.6. So why is that not changing? Why are we appropriating a little more? Because last year we had $7 million in expenditure increases. This year we have over almost $5 million. Those aren't like one-time things. It increased 7 last year. It's increasing 4.8 this year. You got to add those two numbers together. Now, what I can say is we will be talking about other things we can do, hopefully in the future, to reduce the reliance on simple property tax increases. Now, public safety and public works. It's important. We need our police, we need fire, we need streets that are clean. This year especially, our parks and DPW departments were integral in both cleaning up issues of the unhoused, okay, on our streets, but also working with county and local officials and outreach to actually assist the people who are unhoused. That was a huge, huge undertaking. We did it because we wanted to make sure the city could stay safe and stay clean. But again, that was a joint project between fire, police, DPW, and parks. That hit every single piece of our budget. We're doing more and more things like that, and it might as well just fall into the situation of unfunded mandates. Now, I was going to put up a do-nothing scenario. Let's just keep it a 0. It's an election year, right? And that do-nothing scenario would basically put us at firing 15 police officers or laying off 15 firemen about a year out, okay? Well, here's the reality with the actual tax rise. We have to work together to reduce our reliance on reserves, because this is what we're looking at right here. By 2027, we'll have just over $3 million in the reserves left. But we're getting there, okay? And the reduction in the proposed tax rise is one sign. And the fact that even though the tax rise by percentage looks scary, the monthly amount of that is, not to say it's not a lot, but we're talking about $15 a month. Certain neighborhoods, $8 a month. Other neighborhoods, $25 a month. So I don't ever want to be in a position, just like I was last year, asking for, quote, more money from the taxpayers. But what we're asking for in dollars, I'm trying to tie to the fact that we call the police when we need them, we call fire when we need them, and DPW and Parks is out there taking care of the streets, and parks our kids play in. Shifting the future burden, rebalancing Utica's reliance on property tax. Much of my time last year, tons of my time, was spent on these types of things. So what are some actions to balance Utica's reliance on property tax? Now, if you look at our budget, and actually the council unanimously approved a resolution that I wrote for the council. We got together, and that went to governor, lieutenant governor, NICOM. It actually made some waves in the state. It was a good thing we did. Joint, okay? That AIM funding was flat. Our sales tax is now plateauing. Our property tax makes up almost $40 million worth of the revenues in our budget, which means when the overall budget goes up, a disproportionate amount of that weight gets applied to the property tax owners. So we have to shift it away. So number one, a continued fight for AIM funding. Now, as of last year, this city had not participated in NICOM in over a decade. We started participating. I started talking to mayors across the state. I started networking within that group. That's the New York Conference of Mayors. It's absolutely influential. We're advocating for statewide changes. I was placed on the NICOM Finance Committee. I was working at NICOM this weekend with the NICOM officials to work out the fact that on that committee, I will be leading the charge in a drive for AIM funding. I'm also proud to say, because of what we did, also the way we broadcast what the council worked on the mayor with, working together, NICOM wanted to put me, Utica's mayor, okay, think about that. NICOM put Utica in front of the camera to explain why AIM funding needs to be increased. Not just for Utica, but for every single city across the state. Okay, that's huge. It's a long shot, but it shouldn't be, because that funding has not gone up in a very long time. We have temporary bump right now, and I have to thank the governor for that. But I got to say, it was only a one-year bump. And then a week after the council passes that resolution with me, and we broadcast it to every single assembly person and senator and news channel across the state, a week later, lo and behold, it's been extended a week. And I have to say, I'm crediting this council with working with me on that, because those are the things we need to start doing. Bed tax. We've been doing a lot of work researching why we don't have one. I've been talking to the county executive about the fact that if we're going to be taking care of a lot of things around these hotels, maybe we should look at possibly negotiating some kind of appropriation of that bed tax to our budget for the parks and DPW departments. There's a lot of different avenues we can take, and I don't want new taxes, but the reality is we can't keep applying our tax burden to one single source, the property tax. So we can, in fact, work with state officials and institute a bed tax. There's another trigger for this. Short-term rentals, STRs they call them, okay, Airbnbs. There's new legislation that's been passed, and counties and cities across the state are being asked to address it. One of the things we are being asked to do is pass the occupancy tax for the Airbnbs. So we're gonna go down that road. Okay, not only are we gonna go down that road, but if we can, we're also going to implement a very incremental bed tax, if we could, on the hotels that we're taking care of all the land around. Okay, that harbor that's gonna bring in more people to stay in those hotels. Even if it's incremental, even if it's aggregate, we need to shift the balance away from only the property tax. Sales tax redistribution. This was a discussion years ago. It was in the news. I've talked to the county executive about re-explaining to our city, myself, the controller, the deputy controller, what that looked like. Because it was on the table many years ago, and I didn't say, hey, let's do it. But I said, I want to see that proposal, because back then, the statement was Rome and Utica would get much more from the sales tax distribution if they went down the path of working with the county on a new plan. Now, I want to look at that, and if it is something that will continue to provide an increase and not peter out in a couple of years and then have us backwards, it's something we're going to look at, because again, we need to find other revenue sources. We also need to find other revenue sources for all the people that come into the city and enjoy our city, instead of making the residential property owners and the property owners of commercial businesses be the sole source of what funds our budget. Securing grants and project funding. Now, this, I'm not talking about the Restore New York grant. I'm not talking about a DRI. I'm talking about the fact that Jack Spaeth in the Urban Economic Development Office obtained over $550,000 worth of grants for efficiency, for green technologies, and for building maintenance, those are funds that we would have had to either spend capital or operational expense on. That was a real expense that would have been in our budget this year if we didn't find a way to buy 3 codes vehicles without paying for them, okay? If we didn't go after a grant to put new generators in our firehouses and at the rec center. So more and more, and actually I've appropriated, and we're doing a chargeback from engineering to the economic development specialist salary this year, because I've requested that we focus more on that. Because this year we did $550, and that's stuff we would have had to either spend hard cash on or borrow money for. Well, then let's do $100,000 next year. Let's also look at more forward-thinking things, like we have a bunch of parking garages that could have canopies on them. City of White Plains brings in over $1.5 million of revenue because they put solar panel canopies on their parking garages, and now they have another floor of covered parking, and they're bringing in money for it. Things like that we could be looking at for little to nothing, and if we can make it work, that's going to be a shift in that burden of revenue. Igniting momentum, leveraging a new vision, building on success. Okay. This is huge because we just spent the whole presentation just talking about revenues and expenses, right? But there's another piece of what we need to do. We have to keep growing the city. And while bringing in new business or redeveloping something only adds, again, incremental amounts to that tax base, it all does add up. So we are leveraging a new vision. We have neighborhood and commercial vision series decks being put together in the Urban and Economic Development Office. That's not just to go to the state and apply for a grant. That's so that at the drop of a hat, when a new manufacturer comes to town and they say, hey, we're thinking about expanding, I could say, okay, well, here's all the places you can expand. Here's what's shovel ready. Here's what's not. Here's what's in line for the next DEC grant. This is what's on the table. We shut all that down years ago. We spent the better part of 4 years concentrating on one thing and one thing only, spending the ARPA dollars. And it's evident if you look at the activity in the Urban and Economic Development Office. The amount of business loans that were made, I think there was 1 in 4 years. All we've been doing is processing pilots and filing papers. Okay, we got to actually wake that department up again, and we're doing it. Continued support of manufacturing. Film Commissioner, thank you, you're here. And I literally just used this entire series as a way to work with a manufacturer who is trying to locate here right now because they didn't understand that we had a healthy manufacturing environment. Most people think, oh, Rust Belt, everything left. We still talk about GE. The reality is, Paul Buckley spent the better part of last year going to local manufacturers in Utica who ship globally, have been here for over 4 decades in certain circumstances, and are pumping out things that you would not imagine. We have a healthy manufacturing economy. We have a healthy manufacturing workforce, and that is what businesses want to join. A business does not want to be shown a city and be told, hey, move here because we're dead if you don't. Well, that's what we've been telling people for years, right? Or, hey, move up to the hill or do this and do that and maybe go to a hockey game. No. We have it alive and well here. Just on Lincoln Ave, for example, Utica Metals, Darman Manufacturing, right? Utica Metals, you walk in, they're making all the emblems for Harley, Jeep, Mopar, Cadillac, Snap-on. They're doing all that right in Lincoln Ave. The cars you're driving around today, Darman Manufacturing, shipped globally. They're making those hand roll, they're actually cloth paper towel machines. Okay? They're huge in Europe because they don't want to waste paper. Not as big here because we like wasting paper. But they're shipping those globally. 4 generations old. Darman Manufacturing. Okay, Colonite, Indium, Pacemaker Steel. Then there's economies within Utica. Pacemaker Steel is supplying metal to Utica Metals to make things that they're shipping globally. Okay, we have such a robust manufacturing economy in this city. We're going to put that on deck and showcase that, and people are going to move here. DRI proposal. Brian Thomas and I put together a DRI proposal for the city. The entire vision around our new DRI proposal: assemble this city into a civic center. It wasn't fix this building, fix that building. It was, we've got North Genesee Street in the harbor. We have Bag Square East, Bag Square West. We have downtown and midtown, all the way from Munson, all the way up to the 12 Corners in North Utica. We presented a civic center ripe for reconnectivity. Things like putting Water Street back on the map to connect Bag Square East and West. Okay? Things like Bouchard Lane. And we took a different turn. Instead of lining up a bunch of shovel-ready projects that would be put on hold for 2 years while we were waiting to find out if we were going to win the proposal, we found businesses and projects that were absolutely ready and funded to go, but we're on that 12 to 18 month cycle. So every single project we put in this DRI proposal, if we win this proposal, will not slow down the city. It's only going to add to our momentum. Grants. Okay. In February last year, we designated ourselves as a pro-housing community. Sounds like something frivolous, right? The governor literally told everyone, if you want to receive any grants this year at all, you have to be a pro-housing community. Many communities applied, but not many finished the application, and not many went through the trouble of actually getting that designation. We did. That's why People First and the Community Foundation won that $3 million grant to actually put the bow on the funding for West Street and James Street Cornhill project, the Thrive project, right? That's why we're able to apply for infrastructure funding this year and start to talk to the state about St. E's. Okay, there's things going on because of things we've done at the state level that we didn't even have access to before last year. SMART grant, Schumer's office. We're going to revolutionize the actual traffic signaling on Genesee Street. We're going to be a pilot for this. It's fully funded. We're executing it. Engineering's already working on it. That's something now we don't have to pay to fix all our streetlights. They're going to work. And then on top of that, when a fire truck has to drive down the street, they can hit a button and it just turns all the lights green for them. Okay? That's huge. Okay, Broad Street TAP grant. Something kicked off by engineering, sponsored by the council when I was council president, refined by my administration, and we won it. Okay? $4.6 million. We're going to rebuild everything from Nexus all the way to Mohawk Street on Broad Street. There's a sizable match, but we're going to cover it through CDBG. And then so now we're going to have an actual multimodal connectivity pathway from the canal to 5, from Nexus all the way to Mohawk. Well, the rest of Broad Street looks pretty good, so we, through CDBG, are going to make sure that those multimodal lanes for the bikes can go all the way to Culver. So now we can connect starting line apartments to the apartments that are opening on Mohawk Street, all the way to Nexus, with multimodal hiking and biking lanes on the road. And also, now you're going to be able to go right from our canal all the way to our park system, and then all the way to South Utica, New Hartford. We're creating a network of multimodal connectivity. $3 million REDC grant for the Cornhill Housing Project. I talked about that. That is a direct result of the fact that we went after the pro-housing community designation. We would have been disqualified without it. $2 million Canal Corporation grant. Loop the harbor. Okay, putting a bow on the fact that the promenade has literal dysfunction still around it. Okay, that is the final infrastructure to putting the boat launch in. We have the kayak launch, we have the dock, but now we're going to have an actual functional boat launch. Okay, Wattis Foundation. 80% of the funding for the after-school program we're running for recreation right now came from Wattis. Now, in my executive budget, and then passed by the council, we had 2 simple youth employees last year to wake up the rec center Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 12 months a year for students who had nowhere else to go. We did that. Because we did that, we had the foundation to apply for a Wattis grant to extend that program, and now the numbers are insane. It's 60 to 70 kids a day walking through the door. And that's something that's keeping idle hands off the street. $18 million raise grant. Now this is in conjunction with the state and county. You'll see the bridges getting rebuilt on North Genesee Street. These are things we'd be paying for otherwise, okay? And as you can see with my presentation, we're struggling a bit. So we got to figure out creative ways to do this. And then building on success. I talked a little bit about the fact that I'm restructuring the Urban and Economic Development Department. I'm proud to say that we are, because we've now had 2 people accept positions. A deputy commissioner who will now take on many of the roles of that principal planner, but also work with the IDA on economic development projects and business development projects. It's not like, hey, let's get a business, let's help them out. We're gonna start doing things like taking all the vacant land, putting it in a portfolio, and marketing it. And if the land is dirty, we're figuring out how to clean it now. We applied for a $2 million grant, which we expect we may get because it was lined up for the Mealy site, okay? The Mealy site's been marketed. Oh, we're gonna sell the Mealy site next to Fitness Mill. All this time. The reality is every time someone goes to buy it, we say, well, there's about a 2-year roadmap to actually buy it so you can build something on it because it's still dirty. Well, we're gonna clean it first and then market it, right? We have to stop doing that, right? We have all this empty land. We don't market it. We have 17 acres of perfectly usable land, not owned by the city, it's owned by a private person, okay, on North Genesee Streets where the trailers were. We also own land off Leland Ave, okay? Well, I have these people assessing the feasibility of taking that little piece of land we own on Leland and building a little road spur to that 17 acres. Because I'm done telling the world we're landlocked. There's tons of land to develop. There's tons of land to build on. There's tons of places to put new businesses who can pay taxes. Utilization of the IDA. We have an industrial development agency. Okay. We have a not-for-profit arm of that IDA. We have an urban and economic development department. We could be doing things that are innovative with the Urban Renewal Authority and our IDA to truly spur not just economic development like everyone talks about as the buzzword where it's just moving state dollars, grants, and doing this. I'm talking about pure business development, and we're gonna go after industry and keep bringing it to Utica. Thank you. All right. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to introduce the table of organization. Because this is the document that E&A deals with that does not go to the council for approval. Wait a second.
Second.
Great. Anyone,
All in favor?
you want to lay it on the table? No, we're not going to vote on it right now.
No? Oh,
No.
just did- okay.
Would anyone like to make a motion to lay it on the table?
Motion?
Okay.
Second.
Thank you very much. And then I'll make a motion to introduce the proposed budget, the annual estimates.
Second.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
I thought you were saying.
And then likewise, I'm not going to ask anyone for anyone's vote on this right now. If someone would like to lay it on the table.
Motion?
Second.
Second.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you. And then if anyone has any questions, now or at any time, give me a call. The budget director's door will be open as well. And I do want to point out a few things since we're here. The tax information sheet. Well, actually, the first thing I want to point out is the fact that this budget is now a new format, and it is printed right out of the Excel with all the formulas, so that we can post it online. We can take pieces of it, and share it with people, and you could search it. It's different than the scanned PDF, like where it was scanned to text last year. This is fully the next step of this, where this is an electronic document that's been printed for us to look at, just so everyone's aware. And if anyone wants that, I suppose we could give it to them if they want to mess with it. You know what I mean? But there's a lot of tricky formulas in there. So if you like cut and paste stuff, it does get all messed up. Let's turn to page 1. Well, just go to the end, like right before the 51st year CDBG estimated revenues. And then flip up, or to the end, I should say. Yeah, here we go, page 102. I do want to note that Elmir and I gathered real departmental requests. This is genuine. Departmental requests were $98 million. Okay? The expenses that we currently have this set at is $92.9. A vast difference between department requested expense and the expense that myself and the budget director effectively have presented before you. So you'll see a lot of very lofty proposals, which I appreciated, but we are where we are financially. If we would like to turn to page 18. You're fine. Oh, yeah, yeah.
I'll put that in the
All
park.
right, thank you.
For appropriations.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry, page 18, it's last page before the general fund appropriations tab. We did something a little different with our fund balance draws. We're trying to not take as much out of CIT. I'd like to see that account built back up. We're balancing the reserve draw differently. And we're proposing to take restricted reserve monies. And because of that, I just wanted to explain a few of those things. So flood mitigation fund. We were just tasked with MS4, which is a new regulation, and the engineering department and sewers department has to go to great lengths to document literally like all kinds of crazy stuff. Every single catch basin. We have to come up with a bird mitigation plan for our parks. It's very extensive and very expensive. And it has to do with flood mitigation because it's all about keeping the catch basins clear. It's genuinely what it's for. So considering the financial position we're in, I did appropriate some flood mitigation reserve fund to cover part of the salaries and cost of that. We have Stephanie Wirtz, who is the lead engineer on our sewers departments. So while this is a general fund revenue coming into the general, that's why that's appropriated. That covers part of that work effectively. And it's appropriate use of it. The paving reserve fund, $350,000. We appropriated that because we're most likely going to be finally acting on rebuilding Shaw Street. Now, the Shaw Street rebuild is going to cost somewhere between $800,000 and $1 million, which, as you may know, is 1/5 of our paving program minimum. So what we're doing is appropriating some of those funds so that that can be rolled in and added, if you will, to that project so that we can make sure whatever we have to do, whether it's bond less or what have you, we have a little bit more support for that rebuild. The building alterations fund, $250,000. A lot of the repair lines you're going to see throughout these budgets are specifically for building, not just repairs, but true renovations that have to happen, whether it's for ADA compliance, soffits that are literally rotten, long-term maintenance. So we did bring that in. We don't want to just suck the unrestricted dry because the unrestricted is very important. So you'll see that last year we did appropriate $2.5 million almost of the fund balance, if you will, the unrestricted, and this year we did 2.36. So we're trying to balance that a little better and take less out of CIT so that as we slowly kind of dig out of this downward trend, we have something left to work with when we get to the other side. We have to have this to the council by the 20th, but if for some reason we want to get it to the council earlier, I don't have a problem with that. I just want to make sure that every board member has the ability to consume the budget before we consider sending it to the council. And of course, E&A can, if you find any mistakes too, please let me know. But we went through this with a fine-tooth comb about 1,000 times. All right.
And the year-to-date is the February 4th for all of them?
Where are we with
No, or was that
year-to-date?
just
Year-to-date is
printed?
actually December 31st.
Oh, okay, thanks. Oh,
They are different now.
okay, but that was December.
Now, to that point though, councilperson, if you get like the end of the month cash report that Brian McCluskey sends out, you'll have all of those actuals in that cash report.
Thanks.
Really good presentation there.
Thank you.
Really good.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, we have this. Okay, we do have some other business.
Yeah, we gotta get these.
All right. Is this all set?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe.
Diana sent it.
Yeah.
All right, so we know what's up now.
We know what's up.
We know what we're doing with it.
Yep.
I'll gladly move this.
I'll
Second?
second it. Which one are we talking about?
All right, so this is the city clerk salaries to the common
Okay.
council salary. Yeah, this is the one to
Yeah.
fill in for our vacancy, I guess
Yeah,
we'll call
no
it.
problem.
Yeah. Okay. And then we have another piece to incorporate the 50th year CDBG funding into the 24-25 capital paving project.
Move it.
Second?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Motion to adjourn?
Thank you.
Thank you.